All right. It is Thursday, April 11th, 2024. And guys, you're watching the MMA Eco Live podcast live from beautiful Portland, Oregon. I'm your host, Chris Presnell, owner of MMA Ecosystem, reporting on Asian MMA news. Also have worked for Tapology, or currently work for Tapology, have worked for various different publications, worked as a manager, all that good stuff. But for the next hour, up to hour and a half, your attention is mine. And excited to really get into this UFC 300 card. What I'm going to do on today's show is I'm going to go through the whole card. And I know this is a little bit outside of Asian MMA, but I'm just going to give real brief picks on each fight. And also going to hit some Road to UFC updates, some real quick shout outs to some prospects competing this weekend, but overall the focus will be UFC 300. Really excited to get into that. So without further ado, if you haven't liked the video, subscribe to the channel, would really appreciate that. And trying to grow this in 2024 to, just putting a lot of attention focus on this YouTube channel. Really appreciate the support. Before I get into all the UFC 300 stuff, diving into that really deep, let's talk a few prospects this weekend. So on Saturday, there is a JCK event where they're kicking off their bantamweight tournament, and 8 fighters, one of which is the champion Wang Xiaonan. He is fighting a guy named Luo Tianlong. And personally, I don't really know why Luo is in this tournament. JCK has given him a lot of chances recently to shine, but he's gone winless for a long time. And so this should be an easy win for Wang. Wang is one of my top prospects out of all of China right now, maybe my top bantamweight prospect outside the UFC, and trains at Black Tiger, a total powerhouse, grinds people into fine powder. I think this should be a quick and easy finish for Wang. So otherwise, this weekend, you've got a lot of events. You've got a Road FC as well. Some really interesting fighters on this card. From India, you've got Punyajit Likharu, trains out of Soma Fight, 4-0 fighter who just made the UFC PI combine and got into the academy as well. And some really good skills from this guy, a pretty solid wrestler, needs a lot of work, but I think could have a really bright future. He is just 4-0, trains with a good gym, and now he's at the UFC PI. So I think he is a guy to watch for. He is fighting on the card. Also got Park Soo-won, really good lightweight prospect. And in the main event, you've got Kim Tae-in, who is a Korean heavyweight who's 4-0. And not a lot of really good heavyweights out of Asia. So you got to think, if this guy just wins a few more, he's probably going to get a big opportunity next. He is everything a big promoter wants. Not only a fighter from Asia that can command a big following, but heavyweight. Not a lot of young heavyweights with undefeated records, especially out of Asia. So he is fighting for the Road FC Heavyweight Championship against Taisei Sakino from Japan. Road FC goes down Friday night in the U.S., Saturday evening everywhere else in Asia. Otherwise, this weekend, you've got Lion Championship in Vietnam. You've got Soon MMA in China. Lots of things going on from Asia this weekend. Some Road FC updates. Let's see. Basically, I think most of the tournament is figured out by now. I thought that we would get an announcement from the UFC either today or yesterday. I'd be surprised if they make an announcement tomorrow when there's so much UFC 300 stuff going on with weigh-ins. So I'm guessing it'll probably be next week. I was told that it would be around like exactly like today or tomorrow or yesterday, that the UFC would make an announcement, at least of the whole roster, if not all of the fights. So I think you'll probably get an announcement on that really soon. It sounds like the fights from the other weight classes have been figured out. I'm still a little unclear if there's a lightweight tournament or not. To be honest, I haven't really pried into that a whole lot, but a couple fights that I'm sitting on that some I won't end up breaking because because the athlete wanted to break it. The fighter wanted to break it themselves. Some that I may, it kind of depends on when the UFC makes the announcement. but I do have a couple that I'm sitting on that maybe I'll get to announce. Otherwise, I heard about a week ago that there was a possibility that Arisa Matsuda was fighting in Road UFC in the strawweight tournament. And I was confused to hear that because I had already broken all 4 of the fights of the tournament, and not only broken those fights, but it's like I did my due diligence to not just confirm with one side, but actually confirm with both sides, and all 8 sides, whether it was talking to the fighter themselves or, well, gosh, it was actually probably almost always the fighter themselves that all told me not only am I in Road UFC, but yes, this is my opponent. So that would have to mean that someone is out of the strawweight tournament. And what I've actually heard is that it could have been that Arisa Matsuda, they wanted her for the tournament, but it didn't work out. So I don't know. I'm still a little bit confused on that. I've asked around, and we'll see what comes out of it. It could be possible, but TBA on that. Interesting that she's kind of been included in this discussion. But you did see that now Park Soo-woo is fighting Machi Fukuda for the Deep Jewels interim strawweight title now that Matsuda has vacated the belt. So that's what kind of led to some of the speculation. We will see. But at some point, all 4 of the fights that I broke were official. I think they still are, but we'll see what happens with Arisa Matsuda. Anyways, let's get into UFC 300. Let me share my screen with you real quick. I don't often do this, and I feel like I don't often want to do this, but I am going to go ahead and share this with you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, but this is an incredible card. Honestly, in some ways, a rare, if not unprecedented, bottom-heavy card. A bottom-heavy card. What do I mean by that? Well, I don't mean to say that the first fight is better than the main events at the top. I just mean to say that most likely, like, honestly, a lot of the things that people are excited about with UFC 300, what are people excited about with UFC 300? There's not like a big fight at the top that's just taking up tons and tons of space that just feels massive, that everything's kind of leaning towards that. It really does feel like a lot of the conversation is being spread out fairly, I mean, as equally as can be. There's fights on this card that I even like forgot were happening up until a couple days ago. I was like, oh man, Sadiq Youssef versus Diego Lopez, Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. Really like, but for the most part, people are excited that there's 12 current or former UFC champions on the card, and people are excited that the prelims are so good. And so that's what I mean when I say bottom heavy. I just mean that it's not like a typical UFC event where we're mainly talking about the top 3. Although we are talking a lot about the top 3, there's a lot of other things that have, fueled conversation this week, and it's really fun, honestly. I haven't studied any of these other fights. I haven't done tape study, and so all of these picks are somewhat off the hip and a little bit just off of my gut here. So if I were to do in-depth tape study on them, I may totally change my mind, but these are just like how I feel. Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt. I feel like Figueiredo is probably going to win this, and it feels like Garbrandt has been struggling to find his footing. His last fight, he looked pretty good, but that was against someone way, way below Figueiredo's caliber. And I feel like Figueiredo, he's a huge guy and hits really hard. And I feel like that's not a great matchup for Cody Garbrandt. So I'm going to pick Davison Figueiredo by first or second round knockout or TKO. Bobby Green versus Jim Miller is an incredible fight that either will be like a quick finish or just a really, Yeah, a great fight between two veterans that always entertain. I'm picking Bobby Green here, unless Jim Miller can just find a way to like really work his grappling against Green. I think Bobby Green probably going to get some kind of like TKO. I'll just say first round knockout. I mean, he had that great first round KO against Grant Dawson. That was really surprising. And so I think he will probably do something similar against Jim Miller. Unfortunately, I would love to see Jim Miller go 3-0 at the big UFC 100 milestones. Would be amazing, but I think Bobby Green takes this one. Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. Honestly, originally my gut said Andrade here, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes Rodriguez can surprise you, and she's very technical. She's got great Muay Thai. Sometimes Andrade can make very rash decisions when fighting and get reckless. Although I don't think Rodriguez has at least I think everyone can knock anyone out on a certain kind of night, but I don't think she will in this fight. And I think Andrade will probably win, but that's barring any kind of like low fight IQ moments for Andrade. I think Rodriguez usually has pretty good fight IQ, so that'll be interesting. That could be very tactical, but gonna go with Andrade here. Jalen Turner versus Hinata Moicano. I feel like Moicano's on a hot streak right now, and I'm going to pick him to win this fight. I think he'll probably land. I mean, Turner's reach is insane, but I think Moicano, I'm going to pick him to get either a submission or a decision win. That is an absolute scrap. But I think Moicano's got this one. Sodiq Yusuff versus Diego Lopez. Lopez often overperforms, and so it's hard to pick. I feel like sometimes I've picked against him and he ends up winning, but I'm going to do it again. I think Sodiq Yusuff is going to get a decision in this fight. Could be also really entertaining. Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. There's a lot of variables that I think will become a little bit more clear tomorrow, but overall, I think Kayla Harrison, a lot of the questions that we have about her conditioning or just like her weight cut, I don't think that they will ultimately impact her as much as some people think that they will. I also think Holly Holm is being criminally overlooked in this fight. I mean, I'm not out here saying Holly Holm is like the greatest women's fighter ever by any stretch of the imagination, but just because Harrison does have so much hype and so much attention, I think that Holm is being overlooked. And yeah, I mean, the question is, can Holm defend Harrison's takedowns? Otherwise, Holm is going to, outpoint Harrison on the feet and win a decision. This is, even if the weight cut goes great for Harrison, it's still her first fight at 135 pounds. She's still going to have probably a size advantage on Holm, but Holm has fought at featherweight multiple times too. Oh gosh, now that I'm like talking about this, I'm just like, man, this is, if you're going to like break down one fight from this whole card, this would be an incredible fight to do, because it's really, I feel like even now I'm just going back and forth between each woman. And I think I could see each honestly winning. Like I wouldn't be surprised either side. Either way, I do think it probably goes to a decision by each fighter doing what they do. But I am going to pick, Holly Holm by decision. Harrison gets some takedowns, maybe unable to keep them. Holm is able to get back to her feet and land enough strikes on the feet to win a decision. Very unconfident in that pick. Very uneducated, unstudied pick there, but that's how I feel at 426 on Thursday. Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling. Another really hard fight to pick, because you've got someone coming up in weight versus the last fight going down in weight. Sterling is an incredible fighter, also criminally underrated. And I feel like he wins this fight, but I think that Calvin Kattar is not going to get steamrolled. He's not just going to get taken down and submitted right away. At least I don't feel that way. I feel like Kattar probably also being overlooked in this fight, considering he has yet to fight for a title. Sterling has fought and been a champion many times. So all that to say, I think Sterling wins a decision. I don't think he finishes Kattar. Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. I think probably Prochazka wins this by TKO. I'm going to say in round 2. I think he finds the off button on Rakic and gets the knockout. Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. I think Bo gets a first round submission here. Honestly, like, it's interesting. Bo Nickel probably is like the top rising prospect in the UFC, but on this card, I feel like this is one of the more uninteresting fights. And honestly, I'm not hearing a whole lot of buzz for it. I wish people are griping about this fight being on the main card. We've talked about that, but I actually still do think the UFC made a slight misstep here. I think if they would have found an opponent that is slightly more compelling, then I don't think people would have so much an issue. It doesn't mean you have to find someone who's ranked, or even, like a Chris Weidman, or someone like that, but just someone who has a little bit more of a following, or still presents some kind of style. When you hear the matchup, people go, "Ooh, that's interesting." I think if they would have found a different opponent, people would have different opinions on this fight being on the main card. I have no problem with it. I'm watching the whole thing anyways. Oliveira versus Tsarukyan. I mean, one of the deepest fights on the card in terms of, like, if you're going to pick apart one of the closest, hardest to pick fights on the whole card. I think I'm going to pick Tsarukyan here. I'm going to say he either gets like a knockout shot on the feet, which sounds crazy, but I think he has some insane power that people don't always realize. And I think just his athleticism is going to be a lot for Oliveira. I also like Oliveira is another one of those guys that I feel like I often pick against, but he often proves me wrong. So fully prepared for Oliveira to take this fight. I don't know, thinking through how Oliveira would do that and what way he would win. I mean, it's hard for me to really totally think through that. Where it seems like Tsarukyan has a few more ways to win than Oliveira. So I'm going to choose him. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. No way this fight is not entertaining. Like most people, I'm going to pick Gaethje, but I don't think he makes mockery of Max Holloway. I think that this fight probably goes the distance, although I think we'll probably see a better performance out of Max Holloway at lightweight than his last time there. So I'm expecting a Max Holloway, a very impressive, motivated, in shape Max Holloway that's fully ready for Justin Gaethje. But yeah, just because the size, the knockout power, I think that Justin Gaethje probably going to land the more impactful strikes earlier on, and he probably win a decision. Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. I've already put out a video on this giving my thoughts, but let me reiterate my thoughts. I think Zhang Weili wins this with, I don't want to say total ease, but I do think that Zhang will probably run the same playbook that Carla Esparza did against Yan. And I think that she's probably going to get Yan in a compromised situation where she's got her pinned down, something like a crucifix position, and gets a TKO third or fourth round, most likely, is my best pick there. I think that on the feet, things are a little closer. I could be wrong on that. Zhang's got the power. Yan's got the speed, to put it in simplistic terms. But I think, like, Zhang Weili has no reason to strike with Yan. Like, there's no reason for her not to immediately go for a takedown, or at least not to, right when the fight starts, to immediately be working, laying the seeds to lead to her first takedown shot. Most likely, I think she'll have a little bit better odds getting the takedown if she shoots at range than in the clinch. Against Lemos, she really liked to use the clinch work and the trips from the clinch to get her down. But it seems like Yan is a little better prepared for that, and maybe her takedown defense at range is a little bit weaker. So I think Zhang may want to try that. Although, like, I would not be surprised if Yan comes in better prepared than we expect for Zhang's takedown game. She does come from a gym of great wrestlers. And so I'm sure, I mean, if I'm expecting that, they surely are as well. I think that Yan also plans for each opponent. She also adjusts. And I think that she's probably being overlooked in some ways. And I would not be surprised if she does better than a lot of people expect, especially on the feet. I think on the ground, it's going to be a wash for Zhang Weili. And like I said, I think overall the fight will be pretty dominant for Zhang to get even a finish. But between the two, like going into each fight, and I know it in one way, it's not totally fair to say this now after the fight has already happened. But if I had to pick, if you told me either Yan or Amanda Lemos, one of those two fighters will beat Zhang Weili, I would say, well, then it would probably be Yan. I think that she has slightly the better chance of the two. She's a tough fighter, and she has shown a lot of improvement and progression over the years. But I also think Zhang has, and probably like many, I'm assuming like many of you, I mean, you by no means have to hold this opinion, but I'm assuming many of you watching this probably agree with my prediction as well. So Zhang versus Yan. And a quick note on this fight overall. Not everyone has wanted this fight, but personally, I am really excited for this fight to happen anywhere. Personally, I don't think that co-main event of UFC 300 in Las Vegas was the right place for this fight. I don't know if honestly anywhere in Asia or where there's just like a big Asian pop, even if you didn't in Southern California. But no complaints about it being at UFC 300. But I am excited for this fight, and it feels like some things have come full circle. Why am I excited for the fight? Because years ago, when I was waking up at 1 a.m. to watch UFC Shanghai, in 2017, Yan Xiaonan making her UFC debut. A year later in Beijing, same thing with Zhang Weili. Hoping to see these Chinese fighters be able to rise above something greater than a prelim level. Zhang Weili had an incredibly short path to there. Some would say, and maybe I agree that she got rushed to a title shot, maybe a little bit prematurely. Obviously, that gamble paid off because she won the title and has been pretty successful at the title level since then. But just seeing any Chinese fighter get to the elite level, even the ranked level, has been really exciting for me. And now seeing two fighters get to that level, to where their paths have actually met, it's the same time, the same place, I think is really exciting and like validating of how far Chinese MMA has come. So I don't really have, what's the phrase, a dog in this fight. Like I think what I am hoping for this fight is just for it to be, for nothing to go awry. Ideally, I'd love to see each fighter be able to bring their A game and feel like they had and not feel like they were off, I know that's the lamest take ever. Cheering for sportsmanship, cheering for all the athletes to give it their best, all that. But either way, I am very proud of both of these fighters, and pretty insane that they get this spotlight at UFC 300. So there you have it. Main event, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Man, this is all, I feel like a theme of this card is not just the 12 former champions, but it is fighters that are criminally underappreciated. I feel like Jamal Hill is that way. And I would say it's a little bit different for him because Jamal Hill, he is often like I would say he's not totally respected, and most of that I would say is undeserved. He is a really good fighter, and I think worthy of fighting for the belt. But at the same time, like his resume, like he hasn't like fought a lot of the top fighters in the weight class yet. The fighter that he beat, that was his Glover Teixeira. That was his retirement fight. And really, like, Jamal fought for the belt, not because he was the number one contender, but just because the UFC, they needed a main event for this Brazil show. Teixeira was available. Prochazka, the champion, was out. And so they basically needed to have like number two fight whoever was the highest ranked guy available, which was Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill fights Glover Teixeira, has a good performance against him. It was a back and forth fight, but a pretty good performance. However, I think that he could probably end a lot of the disrespect towards him if he beats Alex Pereira. So he's got that chip on his shoulder. I was trying to think through, like, where does this fight rank in terms of all-time light heavyweight title fights in terms of scope? And, you know, there's a couple other ones that I think have been pretty big too. You know, there was like Jones versus Rampage was a pretty cool one. Chuck versus Randy. Honestly, like the glory days of light heavyweight are pretty far behind us. And so a lot of the biggest fights are pretty far in the past. But yeah, but I do think that this one is bigger. I think that whoever wins this fight, fighting Yuri Prochazka, if Prochazka beats Rakic, that will be even bigger, because that'll be, I mean, there was like light heavyweight has just been such a mess. And this is one big piece getting put back together. Jamal Hill getting a shot because he was promised one. It's like, okay, we can, everyone's healthy again, so we can figure out Pereira versus Hill. And then if Prochazka loses against Rakic, then he's missed his shot. And I would say it's probably Rakic against the winner of this fight. And things will be sorted. By then, light heavyweight will be figured out. But as far as a pick, it's hard for me to pick against Alex Pereira just because there might be no one that is just like as much of a killer on the feet right now in the UFC as Alex Pereira, honestly. So it's hard for me to pick against him. I would be surprised if Jamal Hill is going to try to like outstrike him, but the pick is Pereira versus KO round 2, though he could get it done in round 1. All right, there is UFC 300. Let's get into your questions. I have a feeling you all may have a few comments about Zhang versus Yang. A few. James, yeah, saying, okay. Talking about feeling like Zhang is being disrespected. I would have to disagree. I feel like Zhang, like JHK, Zhang Hyun Ko, is the only person I have seen to pick against Zhang. So I feel like the crowds are unanimously picking Zhang Weili to win this. Either way, saying biggest advantage on the feet that Weili has is her right low kick and feints. Xiaonan is a counter striker, so right low kicks and feints will make it hard for Xiaonan to find her timing. Do I agree? She is a counter striker, but she's not only a counter striker. So like yourself, I've also watched about the last 4 fights of Yan Xiaonan, and I've seen her improve and progress in each fight, and I've seen her adapt in each fight. So I think that she is a fighter that builds a lot of her game around the jab. So for her, like, you know, she also starts off really strong as well. So she can be aggressive too. I don't think that she's just a counter striker. And the fights that I've seen, she usually puts out a lot of volume. So I think that, like, as much as this fight is on the feet, which again, if I'm Zhang, I have no reason to keep this here. Not because I'm afraid of Jan's knockout power perchance, but like I feel like on the feet, like in some situations, it could be a little bit of a coin flip. Again, Zhang with the power, Jan with the strikes, but I think that there are windows. There are weaknesses and openings that Zhang has shown, even up to her most recent fight, that I think that Jan could exploit. So that's why if I'm Zhang, like, yeah, get the fight to the ground, run them on a Limoges playbook, run the Carla Esparza versus Yan Xiaonan playbook, and take her out on the ground. As far as is right low kicks and feints, yeah, I mean Yan also has the low kicks as well. Yeah, I'm not totally sure on that. Yan also throws feints, and I don't think that like the feinting and the right low kicks of Zhang are necessarily going to be an obstacle for Yan to be able to find the mark. So that's how I feel about that. So saying the MMA betting community has become, I'm not sure what you meant there, R-worded and started saying that Xiaonan has a striking advantage just because she's 380. Why do they base their picks off of line movement and not understanding how styles makes fights? Because the betting community often doesn't really research fights. That's why. They're looking at like it's like a recency thing where I think, yeah, they see Jan getting the KO over Andrade, which was impressive. There's a lot of technical aspects about that, which I briefly but not extensively broke down in my recent video. But I think that that's probably what they're basing it off of, even though I think that the way that Andrade and Zhang will approach fighting Jan are totally different. But, you know, someone comes off a big knockout like that, and you're going to have people, I think, making too much of that. So I think that's probably why. But I wouldn't worry too much about people that aren't really like, that are just like making uneducated picks, I would say. Mentioned in Weili versus Xiaonan breakdown that Weili needs to prioritize position over damage. True. In the Limoges fight, she was purposefully letting up Limoges and punishing her in the clinch. I think I don't know. I feel like purposefully letting someone up. I don't know. I'm not totally. It seemed to me like when Zhang she was getting a little bit over aggressive in some exchanges on the mat, and Limoges was capitalizing on them. I don't see why you would do that personally, and I also feel like it's a little bit hard to read whether that was purposeful or just being over aggressive. Either way, the result didn't seem to matter too much, as Zhang absolutely creamed Limoges in just about every aspect, except for a couple right hands that got through the guard of Zhang on the feet. But I don't see, if you're trying so hard to get your opponent down and avoiding their striking, I don't know why you would let them up a little bit, especially like Limoges has a pretty good Muay Thai base, and allowing someone to get back into the clinch allows them to get to a place of relative safety, or at least comfort, familiarity, if they do have that strong Muay Thai background. So it seemed to me like Limoges was capitalizing on some positional, like Zhang gave a few things up, and it didn't seem always purposeful to me. I could be totally wrong on that, but that was my read on it. Ooh, yeah. Interested to see how Rey Tsuruya's debut goes against Hernandez. Me too. Tsuruya's wrestling is dominant, and he should be able to dominate on the ground, but I think his wrestling is still very raw. Interested to see how Rey Tsuruya's debut goes against her. Oh, yeah. Same thing. Yeah, I am too. You know, I think Hernandez is the perfect debut opponent for him. I think he's got some pretty good grappling as well. And so I think this is a good test for Ray Tsuruya. What stands out about his game is his intense aggression. And he almost back to like the last comment, like about being a little bit over aggressive in some scenarios is so far it hasn't mattered too much for Tsuruya, because if he gives up position, he can just like be aggressive again and continue to control the fight. Now, how far is he going to be able to do that in the UFC as he gets higher and higher? I expect we'll probably see, like, if Tsuruya just fights guys at the bottom of the flyweight division for a couple fights, which I think he should. I think probably he's going to go on a tear, similar almost to like Tetsuro Taira, but I feel like Tsuruya has a higher ceiling even than Taira does. I think it feels like he has some tools and some approaches to the game that Taira is lacking. But I am really excited for that too, and I love that it's at UFC 303 in Las Vegas. I think if you're the UFC, you try to you really build up fighters like Tetsuro Taira and Ray Tsuruya. I think that Japanese MMA market, it's ready and waiting to be like ignited for the UFC. Ryzen's doing a lot of great things there, and they have rebuilt a lot of what was lost with the MMA market there. But as far as the UFC, I think that it's still kind of just waiting there until someone lights the match. So I think Tsuruya could be that guy for sure. A lot of toxic fans in MMA. Is that healthy for the growth of MMA in China? Well, it honestly is. I hate to say it, but like, conversation is conversation, and I agree that I don't spend time socializing on the internet, at least outside of DMs, like many of you do, and that's totally fine. Don't let me stop you. But like, so I'm not always like super dialed into what the fans are saying, but honestly, I think it is. It's like, if people care either way, then it's going to grow. Is it going to grow into a product that we enjoy? Maybe not, but either way, discussion is discussion, and especially when there are when people are excited about things, then I think that it will cause the sport to grow, honestly. Why do they match Choi and Jinyu Shirye in round 1? They usually don't match the stronger fighters in the first round of Road to UFC. Yeah, honestly, I was surprised. So flyweight, I wonder. So I know 3 of the 4 flyweight fights right now, and two of those I've broken. One I'm holding back, and it's I'm only going off the 3 that I know about. But so we've got Choi and Jinyu Shirye. We've got this mystery fight, and we've got Ian Shuai versus Kiru Singh Sahota, which honestly, I know nothing about Kiru's game. Nothing at all. Ian Shuai is a pretty good prospect. I think that Road to UFC is perfect for him, where I'm like, you still have a few things to prove to me before I am ready to put my full stamp on like UFC ready, big prospect, all that kind of stuff. But I think that he has a lot of good tools, and he's super young. But yeah, so I know nothing about Kiru Singh, so I don't know if that feels like a proportionate matchup to me. The mystery fight, I kind of see where they're going with that one. But you're right. These are 2 really strong fighters. Honestly, like, flyweight traditionally, I think, has been one of the more stacked tournaments. And I'll have to see who the last fight is in flyweight to really decide that. It might be that a lot of the best Asian flyweights that are available to the UFC have gone through the first 2 seasons of Road to UFC, and season 3. I don't know. There's a couple. just the fact that they recruited Kiru Singh Sahota, a guy from England, is a little bit interesting to me. I know they had Mark Klamaco. It's kind of the same situation as Mark Klamaco last year, but Klamaco was like a pretty good international prospect. And Klamaco is he's fighting in Uriah Faber's promotion coming up here soon. So he's not going to be there. But, you know, they actually have a handful of pretty good Indian fighters this year. And so I thought it was interesting that they recruited Kiru Singh. I was like, were there not enough Asian flyweights immediately available? I don't know. I don't follow British MMA super closely, so I hadn't heard of him before. But that's, you know, he could be he could win the whole tournament. You never know. But yeah, I think it's good. I mean, if you're trying to prop up, if you're really trying to test Jinyu Shirye, then I say, like, yeah, let's give him tough matchups. Let's push him to be his absolute best. I heard a rumor. I don't know if I really trust this rumor, but I heard a rumor about Choi Sung-gook fighting again, which I would really be against that. I'm like, dude, just like fight 2 times on an international, like have 2 good fights internationally and then join the UFC that way, you know, or just see if you could get in through some non-tournament fights. I don't feel like you need to fight 3 more times, you know, but we'll see. We'll find out soon enough. Yeah, I don't know if I could say Rose fans are all unanimously picking Xiaonan. It's hard to quantify that. You may have a couple like anecdotal claims of that, but I don't know. Honestly, I think a lot of Rose fans don't really care about Zhang either way. I think a lot of people are fans of Rose just because they like her fighting style, not necessarily because of like anything else, you know? So I have no idea. A win, that's a good question. A winning condition for Yan Xiaonan. I would agree that it is if she were to win the fight. So I almost feel like a video series that is right, just like asking for me to take a hold of is, I would call it devil's advocate. How so-and-so can win. Because when there's a big fight like this, and I'm like trying to get into the weeds of it, especially if there's like a big favorite, I feel like I take the challenge upon myself to think through like, okay, what is like the situation for the underdog against all odds to win the fight? I mean, obviously short of just like a random punch that gets through and, you know, a Matt Serra versus GSP kind of situation. But I think for Yan, if she were to win, first of all, I think Zhang would have to have an overall off night, feeling slow, bad weight cut, something like that. But I think like if Yan were to win, I think it would be a close decision. I think it would be, and I'm not saying this will happen. This is what would happen. I'm not saying this is how striking exchanges would go. But yeah, I think it would be where Yan is able to get the timing down on her jab and continually just send it through the guard of Zhang and use footwork to avoid takedowns and, you know, able to stuff the takedowns and able to take just enough rounds on the scorecards through close striking exchanges. That would be like, if everything goes right for Yan, short of a flash knockout, something like that. So that's how it would go. And there are title fights that you and I have both watched where a challenger rises to the occasion and puts on the performance of a lifetime. We've seen that over and over. I mean, like Strickland versus Adesanya puts on the performance of a lifetime. Dillashaw versus Barao. Nobody. I mean, that fight almost seemed like unfair. Dillashaw just seemed like this he seemed like the kid that was getting thrown into a title fight way too early, and he puts on an absolute masterclass. Maybe the best performance I've ever seen in an MMA fight. And I'm serious about that. My jaw was literally on the floor, not literally. My jaw was metaphorically on the floor for 25 minutes as I watched that fight. It was incredible. So I mean that's the kind of like surprising performance that Jan would have to pull off to win. And again, I say that as in like I feel like Zhang probably has this in the bag. That's why I say it would be so surprising. So why is it bad to overlook fighters? If the favored fighter wins, then no problem, right? Right, but I think overlooking a fighter by definition means that you are, one, maybe not doing your homework or not adequately assessing a fighter's skills. Two, it means that you are maybe biased. Maybe you have a strong, attachment to one fighter, and you're so confident in their abilities that you are not taking challenges seriously. So that's something, working as media, that's something that has really been brought to the forefront for me, because I've always had, I wouldn't even say super strong attachments as a fan to fighters. I mean, I generally root for Chinese fighters to win. I generally root for Asian fighters to win when they have to fight each other, like this freaking Sumo Darji versus Joshua Van fight. I'm like, gosh, man, like, may the best person win. But overall, yeah, I think that, I mean, if you feel like you're able to detach yourself from the emotional constraints of being a fan, and you're thinking through things from different angles, and you still feel like fighter B has no 1% chance of winning, then by all means overlook them. But we've also seen how fighters, champions in title fights, kind of get bored with the game. They overlook their opponents and they get caught for it. So there's also that side of it too, from a fighter's perspective. Nice. Weili has her own embedded section on Migu. Very cool. She's been integrating meditation in a routine. Meditation is one of those things that can go a lot of different ways. And so there's really like, it's kind of like, what are you hoping to get out of meditation? What kind of effect do you want it to have? And then you kind of build it off of that. For some people, it's literally just to be present with their body, to be able to notice things in their body. For other people, they want to be able to control their breathing. They may meditate and literally just consume their consciousness with their breathing. And so in that way, trying to get a better handle on how they control their breath. Other people, it's more about like, fixating on something positive, filling your mind and emotions with positive things to give yourself a calmer, better outlook on life. So meditation can go in a lot of different ways. Generally, I feel like it has a good, it has overall a slowing effect. Meditation has a slowing effect. So I think it's overall good for stress, to help you to slow down. And I guess you could meditate on anxious thoughts too, but like in general, it's going to give you a positive outlook on things, feeling connected to your body, being able to control your movement is going to have a good effect on your mood, right? So if anything, I think it could help increase mental clarity. If I was a fighter that was meditating a lot, I think I would focus on breathing exercises and then think through how I could even incorporate some of those breathing exercises into my training, into my walkout, all of that kind of stuff to help bring my mind back to a relaxed state. Although you don't always want your mind in a super relaxed state when you're fighting. Clear, yes, but relaxed, not necessarily. You want things to be able to react quickly So yeah, I mean, I think it's only going to help someone like Weili is what I have to say. Most Rose fans, or I would say Rose fans that you interact with, repeat this: Weili won the belt and is champion by default since they didn't win off Rose. Well, I mean, that's the way MMA works, right? People change weight classes, and or someone retires, this or that. Like, that's just the way MMA works. So you may not respect someone like Jamal Hill that won the belt off of less than ideal circumstances. I would say you may not respect him as champion as much as you would respect someone like Yuri Prochazka, but he's still the champion. And it's like, for a situation like that, I was like, yes, you are the champion, but I feel like there's something inside of me. It feels like there's some tangled knots that need to get untangled before I can really not consider you the champion, but like, I don't know, some kind of inner peace that I feel with you claiming dominance over the whole division, which is what a belt is supposed to signify. But, for Weili, it's like, that's just the way MMA works. People move around. And so, I mean, that happens in every single weight class. Saying that Weili needs to strike to initiate her takedowns. No, I actually agree with that. I mean, she did that in the Limoges fight too. I think it's good for her to set up her takedowns with striking, but I would say, even from like in the Limoges fight, you saw her using kicks pretty much, very, very few punches. When she did throw her punches, they were pretty much just like a route to get her to the clinch or to the takedown, to the trip, something like that. So I still think that she needs to set up her takedowns, but I think she may actually have a little bit better chance landing them if she uses her strikes to like set up a double leg rather than a clinch or a trip, something clinchy related, just because I feel like, I mean, it's so hard to tell, right? It's like when you're looking at someone like Yan Xiaonan thinking, how does this person defend against takedowns? There's a lot of different kinds of takedowns. To just say someone has good takedown defense is a little bit reductive, because like there's so many different kinds. Like a judo fighter may have a better chance getting someone down than a classic wrestler, like an American style wrestler. There's Greco-Roman wrestling, even someone like, I think about Loma Lukbunmi. And, when I would go and watch her fight early on in her career, she would get fighters to the ground often, so many times, just because of her Muay Thai. She would clinch up with people, and then she would sweep their leg out and knock them on their butt. So, I feel like as I watched Yan Xiaonan, I didn't see her fight anyone like Weili. So it's like, I don't exactly know how you're going to be able to manage everything. And you've also gotten better in between fights, this and that. But of all the people that fought Yan Xiaonan, Carla Esparza had the best takedown success rate against Yan, and she would shoot at distance and usually get things to the mat without using the clinch. So that's the only information I have to go off of. And against Mackenzie Dern, and I know Dern doesn't have the best. She does not have like great wrestling. She's trying to use trips a lot more often, but Yan was a lot better at defending those She was better at defending those than she was against Carla's at range takedowns. So I feel like between the two, I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, Weili could, she could just be that far ahead of, and I think that she is ahead of Dern in the clinch. But just if I was writing the game plan, that's what I would do. No, yeah, I agree. Team Weili all day. I'm excited to see the game plan our team comes up with, since Weili just said in an interview that when my opponent is different, I become different. Yeah, and even I've said, like, yeah, run the play for Amanda Limoges, or what Carla Esparza did against Yan. Even that, though, like I wouldn't even just say like yeah, there's there are differences for sure between all those fighters and opponents. But yeah, I agree. I'm interested to see as well. Let's see. Jan has never faced a hostile crowd or been in a co-main event spot. Some people don't rise to the occasion. That's true. She is fought. I know this doesn't totally this doesn't compare to the event of this magnitude, but she's fought in a couple main events before. She's fought 5 rounds. So I'm not concerned about like conditioning or fighting 5 rounds, things like that. She has fought I guess her last fight was at the Prudential Center in Newark. I don't think that the crowd is going to be hostile towards either fighter, honestly. It's a Las Vegas crowd. Like, there's going to be people traveling from all over the place. There'll probably be some like diehard Weili supporters there, but I don't think there'll be a lot. So I don't think the crowd is super gonna. Maybe I'll be shocked and surprised, but I don't think it's really going to go either way. Fear Zhang and Yang is a boring fight, and honestly, I could honestly see that. I think as long as the fight is on the feet, it's going to be exciting. But as far as a raw entertainment spectacle, I feel like most likely it's going to be. I think it'll actually be more exciting than Zhang versus Lemos, because I think Zhang could get a finish here, but and I feel like the stakes are higher. But yeah, I think if it's on the feet, I think it'll be really exciting. The stakes are higher, the nerves are going to be higher, all of that. Bigger event than either have ever fought for. But I could see an outcome of that for sure. Definitely. Excited for when I get to the Road to UFC segment. Yeah, I touched on that. Rewind if you, or after the fact, rewind if you missed it. Not a whole lot of things, a whole lot of news for it. We'll find out soon what all the other matchups are, and I'll have 1, maybe 2 fights that I'll break hopefully before then. How big of a factor will not only champion experience be and feeding off the crowd's energy? Well, I don't know. Again, like, I guess you asked that question after I just answered it. Championship experience. Here's the thing though. It's like titles change hands all the time. So, Jan has been in big fights. She's been in front of 18,000 fans before. She's been on big events. She's fought 5 rounds. She's had her face on a poster several times. Like, I honestly don't think the moment will be too big for her. But Weili has done this over and over again at like this championship level. So I think that definitely is a plus, but, at the same time, like, other people would argue but here's a hungry contender wanting to take the belt from a fighter that's already had the belt for several times. So there's different sides to it, and honestly, like, yeah, titles change hands all the time. Again, like Adesanya, championship level experience over and over and over again. Strickland had an amazing night, so you never know what's going to happen. When can we expect a full roster for Road to UFC? 2 weeks ago, I heard the UFC will make an announcement in 2 weeks. So anytime. I doubt that they would do it. I don't know. Maybe they will. Sometimes their promotional decisions confuse me, but I would doubt that we'll get it before UFC 300. If I was running the UFC, I would put it on the UFC 300 pay-per-view broadcast, but this is why I'm not running UFC for decisions like that. So maybe by like Monday, Tuesday, something like that. I don't know. But early next week, probably. Clinch striking as well as the takedown threat is incredibly dangerous. Yeah, I do think Weili she is really she's a beast in the clinch. If they clinch, she's going to beat Yan up with elbows, punches, everything else. Like she is a destroyer in the clinch. So she could try to go that route to take Weili or to take Yan Xiaonan down and try to beat her up a little bit first. But honestly, I think she's got a lot of options for sure. They said they'll release Road to UFC late March, and it's almost the middle of April. Exactly. Yeah, answer that one. Counterpoint to Xiaonan's jab. Weili has a move where Weili times a low kick as a response to the jab. It's hard to deal with as a jabber. Yeah, I mean, honestly, though, like a lot of fights that I've watched of Weili, like she has gotten caught with the jab several times, what I saw in the tape. So sometimes I think that she can be a little bit predictable on the feet. Like she, like I mentioned this in the video, like bouncing up and down with her hands kind of has the same effect of rolling her hands. And I've seen the jab slip through over and over and over with her. So, I would think that like in time, like that's something that's a gap that she's going to fix. But that at least in like her early championship fights, that was something that opponents caught her with over and over again. So, and with Yan, I feel like being one of the faster fighters in the division, that would, if I'm her, that would be something that I'm trying to land. Go. There you go. And yeah, kind of talked on the clinch there. Whoever has their back close to the fence will be at a big disadvantage. Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. I think whoever is more aggressive with their footwork could be. Both have like pretty good footwork, so that will be really interesting to see how that plays out for sure. Hernandez is a good test for Ray Tsuruya to compare his performance against Tetsuro Taira. I don't think is going to land a strong right and get a knockout. Yeah, that's true. Taira, he did show evolution in that fight against Hernandez. That's for sure. See, talking about Weili striking in transition. She'll damage the opponent when they try to escape, maybe not letting her up, but using scrambles from Weili's opponent to her advantage by hitting the transition while the opponent moves to escape. That could be true. She definitely attacks in transition. That is for sure. Whether she is giving space for the transitions to happen or if she is simply just attacking during, aggressive during every moment of the fight are slightly different things. But she definitely is someone who is really good at attacking in transition. That's for sure. I think for JHK picking Xiaonan, I honestly don't mind it. I don't mind him picking Xiaonan. I don't agree with it, but like, I don't know exactly what, like when I listened to that video segment, he didn't necessarily say why exactly he thought that Yan would win, but some of that could be, I mean, as media, when you interview someone, often you kind of create an attachment to that fighter. But he's around a lot of people that are very high on Weili's skills and are on very team Weili as well. I mean, he spends a ton of time at Bong Tao, so he really has a connection to both fighters potentially and has a better assessment of Weili's skill. So that was why I thought that was really interesting, was because like he doesn't train with Weili. I doubt he really, like, I don't think that he is privy to like her strategy at all in this fight. But he is around a lot of people who train with her, who tell him how much of a beast she is. So that's just why I was surprised that he picked Jan to win. But yeah, I thought that was super interesting as well. Do I think season 3 overall participants is a stronger roster than the previous 2 seasons? Much of the top prospects been taken already. That's an interesting question. I do think over time, like, once Road to UFC hits season 7, I think that I think year over year they are gonna start to like catch up to the speed of which these prospects can be created. In some ways, I also think some markets will get better and better and better, or some countries will get better and better. So we're not going to rely so much on Korea, Japan, and China. Excuse me, but so it'll change. But I know. What have I seen? I know a handful of the featherweight. There's some really good. I think featherweight is probably going to be your deepest division this year. Trying to remember if there's been any featherweights that have been announced yet. Oh, Shiabin versus Hamid Amiri, which that is a weird one to me. So weird. I feel like there were so many amazing featherweights available and wanting to join Road to UFC this year. And I mean, I'm not saying Amiri doesn't have a chance, but like, I think just to pick out of left field and pick someone from Afghanistan, fully knowing that they were going to do Abdul Azim Badakshi last year, but I kind of include that with like the Central Asia region. I feel like eventually we'll probably see Road to UFC expand maybe to like Central Asia as well as the other parts that they're already doing. But I feel like featherweight is going to be really good this year. Bantamweight, I think will be pretty good. I know 5 of the 8 fighters for bantamweight, so still TBA for that. And then unsure about lightweight if they're going to do that as a tournament or as one-offs. But I know a handful of the fighters that have at least applied for lightweight, and they're top guys. So we'll see. I honestly think, from what I know right now, it may actually be a little bit better. I think that especially season 2, there was a lot of fighters that were from countries that the UFC wants representation in, but I think we're not ready for that opportunity just yet. And I think this year, so talking about India and Indonesia, this year, I think the fighters from India, for the most part, will be better. Look at me doing like an Indian head bob there. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah. But I think overall the fighters from India will be better than the first 2 seasons. And I also think that Indonesia will have a very small, and I like, to be candid, I don't think that there are any fighters from Indonesia that should be in Road to UFC this year. If you put a gun to my head and made me choose, I would say Windry Patsalima, potentially Furman, Sayak, the featherweight champion with one pride. But I just feel like it should be an off year for Indonesia to kind of rebuild. But overall, I think it'll be a pretty strong year. So I think it could be the strongest one yet. Don't understand why they dropped the lightweight tournament. There are good guys like Ali Mulata-Bieka. Yeah, he's a possibility, as is Red Horse. Both of those guys I've heard they would love to be in Road to UFC. I'll tell you that. And I think that they if they can work things out with JCK, you'll see Weili at least at the very least in a non-tournament fight. I think you'll potentially see Red Horse. I'm not sure what his contract is like with Ryzen, but I know that he applied to go to Road UFC. So yeah, I mean, lightweight, if I was doing it, I would say Ko Suk-hyun, who is he's fought at welterweight, but I think that's public that he is going to be in it. Ko Suk-hyun has posted or things on stories, or like people have posted things on stories, but yeah, he's going to be in it one way or another. Kim Sung-wook, who's in it last year, I think he also applied. Weili Mulata-Bieka, Ding Meng. I haven't heard anything for sure on him, but he is a name that I've heard thrown around. So how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fighters. At one point I heard Lee Isak, Korean fighter, was going to be in it, but now I've heard that wasn't totally true, which is why I didn't come out and report that. But so there's 5 fighters there. Yeah, it's like lightweight. There's a couple really good guys, but it's like right on the line of like, can we get 8 fighters for this? That's the question. I think you could definitely do 4. You can definitely do 4. Like, yeah, Ko Suk-hyun, Weili Mulata-Bieka, Ding Meng, and Red Horse. Definitely put those 4 guys against each other. That's great. Non-tournament fights for sure. I don't know if you know what cagecraft is, but it's awareness in the cage. Having your back to the cage removes 180 degrees of movement, while if you have your back to the center, you have full movement. Yeah, totally. Yep, that makes sense. Is Aziz Kadyrov? I need to check in with that guy. He's a Tajik guy who lives in China. Yeah, I need to check in with him. I actually meant to weeks ago. It's just see like, hey man, how you been doing? Anything coming up? But he's another guy that I would put in that lightweight division, definitely. Asking about cagecraft, yeah. Yeah, one area I didn't honestly get it super into, and I've never claimed from my breakdown videos to be exhaustive in any regard, but the footwork, I think, could be a big factor in this fight for sure. Shifting gears, is most MMA promotions a money line? Woo! Some spice on these noodles. I asked on Drake and Pat Auger, and they were being sarcastically funny about it. Is it a money laundering scheme? Probably a few of them. Probably. There are some MMA promotions that are not there to be MMA promotions. I'll just tell you that. But I don't think most of them are. But you got to think. I mean, just like, UFC, PFL, there's that level. But then there's like, there are so many shady people in the business of MMA. I mean, I dipped my toes into MMA management, and I just saw like, wow, yeah, not every single person that I thought was a outstanding citizen is like at all an honest person. Like, there's a lot of really dishonest people in this sport. So, would not surprise me at all. See, building on a point about clinch versus leg takedowns, I've seen Weili in the last 4 fights, even the Rose fight. The Rose loss, Weili used singles, doubles, and trips, so she has variety. Yeah, I think so too. With thinking, why did she choose clinch against Lemos? Well, and I actually pointed this out in my Lemos versus Zhang video, that I felt like Lemos was really weak in the clinch, and so I thought that would be a really good place for Zhang go, and she did. And so I think that, I think you're absolutely right. I think that she does have, some more traditional takedowns with singles and doubles. She definitely has them. I just think that she strategically chose the clinch in trips and whatnot against Lemos because she thought that's where she would be weak. You have the press conference up. This is actually a press conference that you know me. I don't really get into like the press conference kind of things much, but this is one I wouldn't mind watching. Seems like a nightmare asking questions. I know. I mean, think about if you're like, Marina Rodriguez showing up to this press conference and there's 25 other fighters. Like, I mean, good luck if you get one question, honestly. How does one measure hunger? You can't. That's the interesting thing about it. Xiaonan might be hungry, but Weili also has shown that she's hungry by improving all the time. Yeah, and it's a fight to fight thing a lot of times. Some seasons of your life you're going through a rough one and you don't have a lot of hunger to fight. It could be related to things totally outside the cage. It could just be you still could struggling with previous demons from other fights. You never know. It's one of those things that you can't measure, and oftentimes it's only going to be the fighter and their coaches that really know the answer to that. Talking about, I mean, you can time the low kick, but I watched the fights. Weili was getting tagged with the jab over and over, from Joanna, from Rose. It was just like it was just a matter. I mean, it doesn't matter if you counter with a low kick. It was still something that was happening. Seemed like JHK was picking on just because he interviewed her throughout her career. Maybe. And I'm sure he's met Weili as well. I feel like he wants to make people angry, even though again, I've talked about this with media. It's not so much that you, as media, that you are trying to make people angry. It's more of you want to offer something, anything that is different than every single other person in the media. So, that's why I thought maybe doing a series called Devil's Advocate would be a really good idea, because I feel like it would be something it's not like I'd be out here trying to make people mad, but trying to think through if losing fighters trying to find a path for victory, how could they do so? So I don't know. I don't know why he chose Yan to win either. Very interesting. Don't know if Koseok Young can make lightweight. He's fought at middleweight before. That's why I was surprised to see his name. I thought when I heard his name that he was going to be fighting in a welterweight non-tournament fight, maybe against one of those other names that I mentioned. But I heard that he's going to try to do lightweight. So I don't know. He's a big dude. Oh man, yeah. One championship being a money laundering scheme. I don't know. No comment. I don't know anything about that, but there is very strange promotion overall, for sure. I mean, I can't be the one to say that, but a lot of what you see with one championship is directed not at the fans, but at investors and at capital, raising capital. Been called out for sympathizing with sports washing, mentioned money laundering as MMA promotions. They choose to ignore that aspect. Yeah, I do think it's dangerous to speculate if you don't know what's really going on. I will say that. Dana just said the bonuses for 300 is 300K. That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. But whatever. It's cool. I don't know. I think when I hear that, I'm like, that's great, but like, I know it's not as easy as this, but just like, can we just like make fighter pay? It show to me, it shows like flaws in the whole fighter pay system. Um, I would rather like people get like $10,000 bonuses for finishes, things like that, and then like spread the rest of the money out. But again, this is maybe why I'm not an MMA promoter. It just seems like incentivizing finishes is good, but overall, like increasing overall fighter pay is better. Feel bad for guys like Shavkat missing out on 300 because of Ramadan. Yeah, it's really interesting that people talk about some fans talk about how UFC 300 didn't live up to expectations. I'm like, well, okay, yeah, but like all the other super mega cards happen like what in July or December, and they never have to work around. There's a lot of fighters in the UFC that are really good that have to work around Ramadan, and so like yeah, that was why Islam Makhachev couldn't be on the card, why Shavkat wasn't on the card. Really, almost any other Muslim fighter. Although I heard Bilal Muhammad was willing to fight Leon Edwards, but that fight was never even offered, which I honestly kind of get. Like, listening to that interview today between Ariel Helwani and Tim Simpson, they're saying that the UFC just felt like Bilal versus Leon wasn't the marquee kind of fight that they wanted for UFC 300. And I actually kind of understand that. And I feel like I would rather have that fight like at the top of a London show or a Chicago show. Like, Bilal's from Chicago. So I actually do agree with that. But yeah, so the UFC had to put together this big card without a lot of their biggest names, most interesting fighters. So I think we have to consider that with UFC 300. Am I announcing anything new with Road to UFC today? No, I dropped a couple names that a minute ago that I didn't think were totally public yet that I've heard will participate. But and I talked about Arisa Matsuda at the beginning of the show, and how there was some confusion about her participating. People saying that she was going to, but a couple, like, was it yesterday? I heard that that was the plan, but maybe not. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm still trying to figure out what's the truth about that. I would lean towards her probably not participating, though. Asking about sports washing again, sympathizing if the cards are good. I've covered this a handful of times, but overall, like, I don't feel like I can be the one to judge you for being excited for like a UFC Riyadh card. I'm still conflicted on that, although I feel like you can enjoy the sport, just like the actual fights of it, as long as you are aware of and you can, and you acknowledge what is happening behind the scenes. There's a lot of different opinions on that, and I think that's ultimately where I'm going to land on it. But wherever you do, that's fine. I don't think that there's anything that I can like call you out for, as long as like you fully can acknowledge what's going on behind the scenes, which I don't even know. Is sports washing going on at the UFC Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, all that? That's a whole nother topic. I think that there are more complex ideas and motivations behind something like that. But there are some people in this world that are totally able to separate sport from everything else, and whatever. That's how I would answer that. Would you ever think of doing a podcast on sports washing and its history? Might be an interesting topic. Honestly, I don't feel like there's anything that I could add to it that Kareem Zidane has not already. He is not, I mean, he doesn't have a dedicated podcast for that, but he has talked about that and written about that at length. And so if anyone were to ask me, I would say just like, oh, just listen to his stuff, read his articles. Like he's the authority on that. And I think, you know, if you're going to do a podcast on that, you got to really, really know about political situations in multiple countries. And so, and you got to know a lot of history as well, how sports washing has been used. And I don't have that kind of knowledge. I'm not a political scientist, and I don't know about, you know, Russian and Chechen and you know, history in Middle East, things like that. So, but Kareem does. So I would just point you to him. Is there a reason Chinese promotions are doing more cross promotion this year? Both JCK and WLF are cooperating with a lot of promotions. Yeah, and this will be the last one for today. I've thought that's interesting as well. I think if I were to theorize why you're seeing that happening, baseline just to develop the sport in China and to give Chinese fighters opportunities to fight different kinds of fighters. I think at a base level, there's that. Another level could be trying to grow your fan base outside of China. However, so far, I don't feel like JCK or WLF especially, I don't feel like WLF has done a single thing to grow their fan base outside of what it currently is. I literally have no idea what they're doing, what their strategy is in terms of promotion and marketing. It is so hard to find information about their events. It's so hard to know who's fighting who and at what time, all that stuff. Like, so I don't feel like, unless they change to like a totally different streaming platform, have a different broadcast deal, I don't feel like they're ever going to be able to grow their audience outside of their current audience in China. JCK is at least a lot more accessible through the web, but even with that, it's all through like a Chinese website, and that can be pretty hard to navigate if you don't know the language or just do an auto translate of the page. So there's work to be done if they really want to grow outside there. But I think also like China has this weird phenomenon, which honestly I can't stand. This is one of my biggest complaints about Chinese MMA is, and it's usually not your JCK kind of promotions, but it's usually a little bit more like one-off kind of promotions. They will have these cards where they have Chinese fighters against foreign fighters. They'll bring in Iranians, they'll bring in Egyptians, Ukrainians, Russians, fighters from Thailand, and probably 8 times out of 10, 4 times out of 5, those are mismatches favoring the Chinese fighters. And I think that there is a level of nationalism at play with that. I think that, and I actually don't think that China is the only country where I see this kind of nationalism at play. I see this in some other countries too, in the way that people perceive fighters from the same country fighting each other. And like, but I think there is something to speak of. And I've actually talked to people that live in China about this, and people that work for promotions in China. And they're like, yeah, this is kind of what they're thinking here, is like, they kind of want a little bit of a flex with that. Like China versus all these other countries. So I think you see a lot of those cards, but those hopefully they still pop up from time to time, and they frustrate me to no end, not only because they do nothing for any of the Chinese fighters' careers, but they and actually potentially negatively impact their careers in several different ways. But it also just like from a working standpoint, like they never ever print the foreign fighters' names in English, or if they do, it's like just a first name. They never just print the whole fighter's name ever, which is so frustrating because then I'm like trying to find out who these people are because they're never people that have any kind of notoriety. These are never like equal fights or fights that the Chinese fighter has a chance of losing. So I think maybe this is the kind of the next evolution of that. You saw WLF last year, and they're still doing it. They every single show, the theme would be China versus whatever country. And so I think that was an improvement on that disappointing trend. And sometimes, and guys, like, I don't know if you saw this last Mongolia versus China show with WLF, but the Mongolian fighters actually beat China like 5-3. It was the first, because every single time before that, China had always won. And sometimes the matchmaking was a little bit not the best, but not always. Sometimes it was just fine. But Mongolia actually won last time, which I was like, it's kind of nice to like, I mean, I think it's good to finally be at the point where we can have foreign fighters that actually win, because that makes it way more interesting to me. Otherwise, I'm like, well, yeah, they're just going to set up the Chinese fighters in squash matches. But so they did all of the stuff where they brought in the fighters. And now I think with them co-promoting with other promotions in Asia, I think not only the promotions, but I'm guessing a lot of the fan base really enjoys a lot of that kind of like country versus country kind of stuff. And it is a good way. I mean, I don't think it could work in every country, but I think it is a good way to draw people in to watch when it's like, you know, China versus whatever country. Especially now, I think it's also good that they're going to enemy territory as well, just because I think when you're just, the reality is like Chinese fighters have not always fought very often outside of China, which is I think a detriment to Chinese MMA. So I think it's a good thing. I'm really happy to see it. I think co-promotion between mid-tier regional promotions, and by mid-tier I just mean like not like bottom of the food chain amateur, not the UFC, PFL, or one, but kind of like, you know, top promotions in a given country co-promoting each other. I love that stuff. I think that's really good for all the parties involved. So that is all I got today. Okay, David, Xinjiang, I'll just answer your question real quick. I don't think it's quite that level yet. It doesn't have quite that level of like wrestling prowess, although there's a lot of good wrestlers from Xinjiang. A lot of those Muslim minority groups have a lot of great wrestlers for sure, but not quite on the Dagestan level. All right, guys, that's today's live stream. Really appreciate you joining. I'm going to hop over and see what I missed from the UFC 300 press conference. Probably will have some kind of reaction video out this weekend to Zhang versus Yan. Who knows what's going to happen? Just excited at this point to watch the fight. Hope you are too. Hope you're excited for the whole card. Enjoy everything from top to bottom. And this is truly a great weekend to be an MMA fan. And until next time,